I've been caught, but I'm keeping on check. I've been torn, but I'm keeping on check. I've been broken.
Good afternoon, good evening. This is Dov Tasman, and you're back on equal footing. L'Shana Tova Tikatevu may be inscribed in the Book of Life for those that are going to be fasting and honoring Yom Kippur. May you have an easy fast. This is always a tough time of year for us to program our show. We don't want it to be too heavy. Yom Kippur is heavy enough. We also want to honor people's kind of break from the action, from the routine of their daily life. And Yom Kippur, in a certain sense, honors routine, the process, the valhech, the recognizing our transgressions against God, against others, is very routinary. We do it multiple times during those 24 hours, 25 hours, as it were. And at times, that routine can unmoor us from the essence of the holiday. Not only recognizing our transgressions, our sins, as it were, but taking accountability for change. You know, we've talked in previous years on our kind of Yom Kippur show, which this qualifies as, Yom Kippur starts on Sunday night, about, I think last year's program, I'll have our executive producer correct me if I'm wrong, was called Repentance is a Scam. I'm getting the thumbs up. And that was also about this idea that it's not just about, you know, with no affront at all to our Christian brothers and sisters who listen on this show, to this show. It's not a Jewish network. It's a Jewish show, but we welcome all listeners and participants. There's more of a focus in Christianity, we've heard even from theologians from that faith in the past, on the idea of a confessional. The kind of just saying you sinned has a value. Judaism, it's different. It's about recognizing but changing, taking the accountability to break the back of our bad behavior. And also to recognize how others' transgressions against us is part of a kind of cosmic dance that we need to also take accountability for, at the very least in the sense of forgiveness of others. We've talked before in the show how God cannot absolve you of a transgression against another human being. Only that other human being can forgive you. And so there's all sorts of mystical layers to this holiday. And you know, anytime we have mystical layers and theological complexity, we turn to Rabbi Stephen Bars. Rabbi Bars has been a wonderful guest in the program before, distilling complexity and bringing it down to earth in our daily lives. And as we pose the question tonight of how do we not only recognize the things that we're doing wrong in our lives, that were transgressions against God, transgressions against other human beings, more importantly, how do we actually say enough is enough? How do we break the back of that bad behavior? We turn to Rabbi Bars not only as a rabbi for the theological perspective, but also as a therapist and a life coach, and our wonderful producer, Leah Maznika. We've invited it again to come from behind the sound, from the other side of the glass here in the studio on air. It's a psychotherapist to also give us the psychological perspective of breaking the back of bad behavior. I want to introduce Rabbi Bars a little bit more. Many of you know him from the program before. He's spoken all over the world, from the United States Senate floor to the Los Angeles Improv stage. He's a regular speaker at Fortune magazine summits. He's the author of many books. Notably, his book, Win, was on the Washington Post bestseller list. Rabbi Bars is known for imparting important ideas with creativity, humility, and humor. You can jive this yourself on his YouTube channel. It's by his name, Rabbi Stephen, that's Stephen, Bars, Bars. You should also check out his popular book, Bliss, which is it's about how to be successful in marriage and parenting. And speaking of that, Rabbi Bars and his wife Ruth have 7 children, which is always, he would like me to mention the most important part of his bio. Rabbi Bars, welcome back to Equal Footing.
It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you so much, Dov. It's always an inspiration listening to you, and the topics are always inspiring, and this one's no exception to the rule.
Rabbi Bars, I'm going to ask you, if you don't mind, on the program to speak up and maybe get a little closer to the mic. We heard you, but you're a little, there you go. That's great. Thank you.
Sorry, yes.
And we advertised in our social media blast this program we had a mystery guest. Now, Leah, our producer, and I are also going to open up about this process of changing bad behavior. But we wanted to bring in someone who's really been through the ringer lately, who has asked for and is now receiving, we joked about it before the program, getting some free therapy here along with Rabbi Bars and 75,000 other people. And has been in a cycle of, in a certain sense, being subject to bad behavior, being transgressed against. Okay, we'll get to that, what I mean by that. And is in the process of recognizing kind of what her role is in this suffering. And has been on radio before. We're not going to give her last name. It's really sensitive stuff she's going to talk about. But Michelle, welcome back to Equal Footing. It's nice to have you, and here in studio.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Now, you were married for 10 years. You have 3 children with your ex-husband.
Mm-hmm.
And after years of demanding schedules with work and raising your children, that you started having problems. You grew apart.
Mm-hmm.
And then you met someone new after your marriage. You began a 7-year relationship with this person.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
It ultimately ended in heartbreak.
Yes.
And after 2 years apart, you gave the relationship another chance. And I want to put a little pin in that, because you were on the program.
Yes, I was.
Earlier this year. I think it was in the winter, February or something like that. And you were talking about, the theme of that program was about kind of about second chances.
Yep.
About giving people a second chance. And you kind of opened up more after the program, but you were literally in the process when you were on the air. It was right around the time you were thinking about giving this person a second chance, the person who had broken your heart.
Yes.
And now we know you did that.
Yep.
You moved out of your home. You moved 45 minutes, an hour away.
Mm-hmm.
You took a lot of risk, including kind of introducing, I guess, your kids to this new situation as well.
Yep.
And it fell apart again.
Yes, it did.
Now, appreciate you being back full circle, and then we're going to talk more about your journey here tonight and get Rabbi Bars' input. But the framework is, how many of us feel, Michelle, when we come to Yom Kippur, we go to synagogue, we start pounding our chest, figuratively and literally, about our transgressions, about suffering that we're causing others and suffering that we're experiencing. And we feel, oh my gosh, like I am again. It's happening again.
Yeah.
How many times does it take for me to learn this lesson?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we wanted to talk tonight about. It's really difficult to change. It's perhaps the greatest challenge we have as human beings, how to move from that innate self to a more evolved self. So Yom Kippur, we think, Rabbi Bars, is about more than recognizing the transgressions and the suffering, but making the change. Am I off the reservation, first of all? Is that okay to say theologically?
Is it? I'm not clear on the question. Is it okay to?
Is it okay to look at Yom Kippur as effectively a catalyst for change, or is it more a day of asking or repenting?
It's neither of those things. It's about connecting with your meaning, with the Almighty. It's about finding your purpose, your sense of self. one of the things we do is famous in the prayers. We repeat this over again. It's called the Al-Chet, which is we go through all the various sins that you can possibly do. There's nothing in there you could have ever done in your life that's not on that list. There's the most heinous crimes you can possibly imagine. If you have a Sparta custom, which I do, you even have one for the sins you did in the previous lifetime.
By the way, I love that. I'm half Sephardic, half Ashkenaz. I didn't know that. I didn't know that was one of the Al-Hecht, the idea of like asking for forgiveness for sins from another lifetime.
You see, that's your problem. You see, now you realize why you never felt fulfilled on Yom Kippur, because you had all these sins in another lifetime that you never asked forgiveness for.
We cracked the code.
So how sorry can you possibly, how can you make up for, it's like when I wake up in the morning, I turn to my wife and I say, I'm sorry. And she says, what for? For something I'm going to do today, so I might as well apologize now. How can you change?
By the way, Rabbi, I have to, I don't have to, I'm going to admit that I've used that as an excuse for bad behavior. That kind of feeling, you know what, if I'm going to get blamed for it anyway, I'm going to just do it. What's the point?
Okay, let me know how it works out for you.
Yeah, that doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
Public service announcement, don't do that.
Right. So you see, it's like, I'll give you an example. It's like a kid who's trying to learn how to ride a bicycle. And there's no such thing as learning a bicycle without falling off. And halfway through, they're very frustrated. They've fallen off 3 times, and they turn to you and say, I'm so sorry for falling off. And you look at them like they're crazy. You go, what are you talking about? That's the process of growth. There is nothing meaningful in life that we can ever achieve that doesn't include messing up as part of the program. And Yom Kippur is recognizing that. The kid who feels bad about keep falling off is never going to learn. Our inability to change is because we get stuck in the mistakes and we feel bad about them. And Yom Kippur is about, no, the Al-Chet are all in the plural. These are the things we do. All human beings do these things. We mess up. Every animal on this planet does one thing really well. Eagles soar. Cheetahs run. Human beings are born incompetent. Nothing personal. Some of my best friends are human beings. So we're born incompetent, and it's downhill from then on. Yom Kippur is the day we recognize the one thing human beings do really well is called stupid. That's what we do. And once we admit that, then we can change, because you'll get back on the bicycle. That's what it's all about, in a nutshell.
Now, Michelle, appreciate your bravery for being on the program, talking about what is still super fresh and super painful.
Thank you.
When you listen to Rabbi Bar's talk about, I love the way you put that, like we all do well is stupid. Do you feel, as you do this end of year accounting, that what's happened to you, going back to the well with this guy and having the same bad behavior be evident, and having this heartbreak again, to what extent do you feel this was your fault? To what extent do you feel like, and I'm not saying it is. I'm just wondering inside, do you feel like, are you mad at yourself more, or are you mad at him more? Where do those two things meet?
I think that it's a combination of both, and I've been feeling all of that, a lot of it. I think it kind of fluctuated back and forth. I was really mad and angry and hurt, mostly mad at him. And then I really started to think, I put myself back in this situation again. I was advised by all of my friends and family to not do this. So that doesn't, feel good either, that, I disregarded everything that everyone said to me. And I said, I'm doing this anyway. So it makes me, look stupid, but I just feel that, I wanted to take the risk anyway, but I am mad at myself too.
Michelle, when you do an accounting, of the decision that you made, Does it feel like you would have regretted it more if you had gone back with him, if you had taken this action, or if you had not
taken the chance.
Not taken the chance.
The second chance.
No, I think that's the last thought that I've had, that I am happy that I did try again, even though it didn't work out, that now I feel more certain. I had always had a little bit of doubt left. And I questioned whether, we could make it. So, I'm glad that I gave it a final chance.
Before we take our first break, I want to look in your eye here in the studio. How hard is it right now for you to forgive him?
It's hard. I haven't yet. And, but I will, and I want to. I'm just not there yet. This is fresh. It's only like a couple weeks out.
Yeah. When we were doing some of the pre-show, you showed us a message on your phone, from him or from him. And we noticed you had him saved in your phone with the name Devil.
Yeah.
And then in the car ride over to the studio, you told us that you made a forward movement and you changed that to Dirtbag.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And now we understand that finally he's now David again.
Yeah, I put his name back in my phone.
Right. Rabbi Barz, we're going to take our first break, and I want you to give Michelle some advice after the break. Going into Yom Kippur, someone who's feeling very transgressed upon, what should she be doing? What's the way to approach this holy day? But wait, hold the thought, though. We got to take our first ad break, and we'll come back to you. So we'll be right back.
Hey, hey, Cripple Creek Ferry, running through the overhanging trees. Make way for the Cripple Creek Ferry. The water's going down, it's a mighty tight squeeze.
Any excuse to get Neil Young on the air, I'm gonna use, and challenge to our listeners who can, before the end of the program, we'll give out the text number and a call-in number in a minute, tell us why we picked the song Cripple Creek Ferry for tonight's show. Okay, we want to mention a wonderful sponsor, been around this network for quite a while. This program has been supported by this sponsor for years. And what we have in common with Manhattan Medical, our sponsor, is the commitment to talk about difficult stuff, not shy away from things that sometimes cause us shame unnecessarily, and try to solve issues. In this case, we talk about relationship stuff, theological stuff, crisis of faith, mental health, etc. In Manhattan Medical's case, they talk about erectile dysfunction. You heard me right. It isn't something to be ashamed about. It's not something you need to be embarrassed to talk about. It can cause emotional pain in couples, and there are solutions out there. The first solution is getting help. Manhattan Medical does not rely upon expensive blue pills that many people cannot take because of side effects or comorbidities. Manhattan Medical provides an effective therapy that has enduring long-term results around ED. It's called Gainswave. It's been around in Europe for many years. It was introduced in Canada more recently, and it's fresh to the United States, and you gotta take a look. Gainswave therapy for erectile dysfunction from Manhattan Medical is non-invasive. It's surgery-free. It's painless. There are no side effects. And for more than 90% of patients, there are enduring, wonderful results. I'm going to give out the number a couple times. Here it is, 888-ED-CURE-9. That's in numbers, 888-332-8739. If you call Manhattan Medical and get a teleconsult around ED, which you can do, by the way, not just from Manhattan or the New York area, but anywhere from the United States, you can get that consult for free as long as you mention that you heard about Manhattan Medical's ED therapy on the Equal Footing radio program. So call them, 888-ED-CURE-9. Again, call for a free consultation. That's a $250 value. It is time to address this issue, which affects over 2/3 of men in their lifetime. 888-332-8739.
I've been caught, but I'm keeping on to. I've been told.
Leah, I love having you in the studio because you give me the hand signals that behind the glass I don't see some.
Yeah.
For those, for everyone who doesn't, we're not on video. I'm doing that ad break, and Leah's giving me the kind of move along.
Wrap it up.
Wrap it up. I'm sure our sponsor would want us to spend more time, though.
Yeah.
I'm going to give out some more numbers here. Participate in this conversation. You're live on the radio. You can call in, use your real name, use a pseudonym. We don't care. The number to call is 718-303-9090. That's to call in and talk about changing bad behaviors. 718-303-9090. And you can text in. We've already got a couple texts. You can text or WhatsApp in a question or comment to Rabbi Stephen Bars, to our guest Michelle, to our producer Leah, or to myself. That number, don't call this. This is for text or WhatsApps. 917-428-4062. That's 917-428-4062 for SMS or WhatsApp. Rabbi Bars, Michelle's going into Yom Kippur, probably, I'm sure, taking an accounting of her sins of this past year, but angry and having trouble forgiving and feeling transgressed upon. How should she approach the holiday?
I mean, first of all, I'm sorry for what you went through. It's always painful to go through these kind of things. However, not to undermine that or mitigate that, or maybe it will mitigate that. There are two mistakes people make when we all make that when we make a mistake. And the first one is, which is really important as it references Michelle, is we think that we could have avoided the mistake.
Mm-hmm.
That was not on the cards. You're going to make that mistake. It's sort of like, it's sort of like an alcoholic is going to drink. Is it going to be beer or loving alcohol? But you're not going to be able to stop them from that mistake. In fact, what you should really think about it is what's worse than making that mistake is not making the mistake. Because it's the same thing as riding the bicycle. Human beings, when Kennedy said we're going to put a man on the moon, they knew they didn't have the technology to make it happen, and they knew the only way they're going to do it is by learning from their mistakes. And that's where the Americans succeeded and the Russians didn't, is because they were basically incapable of learning from their mistakes. It's very difficult to learn from their mistakes.
So are you saying Michelle's going to have a better relationship next time around because she is made this mistake?
That's if you follow the second mistake. There's two mistakes. One is you think we could avoid it. The second one is thinking doing the opposite of what you just did will get you a better result. Mm. That's like a guy taking all his earnings and going to Las Vegas and betting on the roulette table black and losing and thinking, next time I'm going to bet red.
Right.
The opposite of a negative is never a positive, except in a battery. That's the only place. Right? Just because you made a mistake here doesn't mean the opposite is going to get you what you want. It's the same, again, riding the bicycle is the perfect paradigm.
So does that
what
mean,
you did didn't work.
Does that mean Michelle shouldn't take as a lesson to not have taken the risk? Like take the next risk? Or what's the concrete lesson for Michelle in her next relationship?
Oh, learn about relationships. It's like, it's like swimming. The first time, or riding a bicycle, someone's trying to tell you what you're doing to be more effective. So thank God we live in a world where you can learn how to make healthy relationships. So the fact that this was an unhealthy relationship is a good sign. You don't know what you don't know enough about relationships. So use it as a way to learn about relationships, but thinking you now understand relationships because this one messed up is a mistake.
Michelle, what is something that, pardon the interruption, Rabbi, what is something that you've learned from this experience that has made you, in your view, better?
That's a good question. It's still very early. I'm trying to process the lessons as we speak. And what have I learned?
Are you angry. We talked about forgiving yourself too. I mean, how angry are you at yourself right now?
I would say almost equally angry at him and myself, right now. But I do feel, I don't know, I think right now I'm in a process of really, evaluating everything and looking at everything, and I'm going to start to work through this, but right now it's still very, I don't know, a lot of it is still even confusion.
One of the things that we were talking about with you, Michelle, in our pregame before the show was this delicate, this fine line between recognizing the mistakes that you've made in the relationship that may have led to or contributed to the heartbreak the second time around.
Yeah.
And slipping into kind of self-loathing. And I do that. Leah, I don't think you're as prone to this. You're more evolved than I am.
Or maybe more in denial. You never know.
But, Rabbi, I think a lot of us do this on Yom Kippur. I think as you go through that inventory, especially the third time through and you're hungry beyond words and you're saying all these things that I and we as a people have done, transgressions, bad behaviors, just a litany. And it's easy, at least for me, both on Yom Kippur and in general during the year when I look at things that bad behavior, to get into self-hate. And I'm wondering if you can help at least Michelle and myself.
Well, I'll just chip in for a quick second. Part of the reason why I asked that question to you, Michelle, and I want to hear the answer once your thought is formed, is that is a coping mechanism or a coping strategy for me when bad situations happen. And I try to take an approach of, okay, I feel really hurt or I feel like I've hurt someone. But how has this experience changed me for the better? Because I feel all the negative emotions. I feel the pain. I feel the hurt. But is there something in this? Is there a lesson? Is there something that I can take to prove that I've changed in a positive way? And the answer doesn't come to me day one. It may not come to me until like day 10. But it usually comes, and it's usually the same thing that's kind of along the same lines of, this has made me more empathetic. This has made me understand that it's not about me. This has made me take things less personally. This has made me connect to it at a deeper level with someone else. This has made me more forgiving. And it's personal to your journey and to your story. But I feel like if you take a Frankel approach of, okay, what is the lesson behind it? And I'm not saying this, as something you should do right away. I think you should process your emotions and process your feelings. But it's really helped me, not be so gloomy about everything, once I take that approach.
Extracting the positive lesson from the pain.
Yes. in short.
Is the Viktor Frankl approach. Does that resonate for you, Michelle?
Yeah, it does. And I was listening very closely to what you were saying. And I think that as you were saying that, what was coming through for me is that I feel that I realize that I have strength. Even though it doesn't necessarily feel that way, like I don't feel strong. But when I look at, going to work every day, taking care of my kids, doing the things that I need to do. I'm finding another place to live. I'm doing all of these things that I keep going, that I keep taking steps forward. And,
right, 'cause
you keep taking risks.
Yeah. I know I have to, but I think the fact that I can continue to do it and keep my head up and, maybe even have a smile on my face, that I'm like, okay.
So you guys are both more evolved. I think all three, including Stephen Bars, Rabbi Bars, and is more evolved than I am, because I tend to go into self-loathing. And Rabbi Bars, is there any, as you listen to these two approaches, Leah's kind of searching for meaning, extracting the positive, and my kind of going into self-loathing, which often, unfortunately, is related to self-pity. Are these Jewish concepts? Is there a role for both?
There's not a role for both. Leah should be running the world. I'm with her. I think it's a great question, great points. It's why there's a famous commentary on the Bible, and he makes this point. If you read the Bible cover to cover, you find the men are constantly messing up, and the women are exemplary. And that's the Jewish view. Nothing personal. Some of my best friends are men, but women really need to be running the world.
I think it's super hard, though, and I hope a listener will support me or disagree. I think it's really hard with the prayers and the inventory that we do on Yom Kippur to not get into a self-loathing place.
Well, I think if you read it wrong, and a lot of people do, and I was guilty of that too. Simcha Weinberg is phenomenal. I highly recommend checking him out. But he makes this point that Yom Kippur Yom Kippur is a very happy day, it's a very fulfilling day. But it is dealing with this mistake of self-loathing that we fall into. It's the biggest mistake human beings make, is thinking that we messed up and we're no good. Mm. That's what when God approached Adam after he ate from the fruit, Adam said to him, "I can't approach you because I'm naked." And God said to him, "Nobody told you you're naked. Mm-hmm. As far as I'm concerned, you're not naked. You can approach me. You don't have to have clothes. You don't have to be worthy. You don't have to. We have a relationship."
Yeah,
and we're constantly trying to prove ourselves.
Pretense.
You don't have to have pretense. You don't have to. We're all looking for an identity to feel worthy. It's the whole world tearing themselves apart, trying to find themselves because they don't feel good about themselves. It's a world that is putting everyone down, so we fall into that, unfortunately.
We're going to take our next break. We're here with Rabbi Stephen Bars, our guest Michelle, talking about her personal life and travails, our wonderful producer Leah Masniku. After the break, Rabbi, I'd like you to tell us, explain in simple terms why Yom Kippur is a happy day. We'll be right back.
That I was bad to the bone, bad to the bone, bad to the bone, bad.
Equal Footing with Dove Tasman is sponsored by MDCS Dermatology, your experts in skincare. With 2 Manhattan locations and 4 offices in Long Island, including Plainview and Commack, the dermatologists and skincare surgeons at MDCS are proud to be affiliated with the Albert Einstein College of Medicine and New York Presbyterian Hospital. So schedule your next skin exam in one of MDCS's convenient New York area locations. To make an appointment, go to www.mdcs.live or call 212-661-DERM. That's 212-661-3376. You could even schedule a virtual video visit with MDCS's board-certified dermatologists from the comfort and safety of your own home. So go to www.mdcs.live or call 212-661-3376. And don't forget to mention Equal Footing for 15% off all cosmetic procedures.
I've been caught, but I'm keeping on to. I've been told.
Okay, Rabbi, you had a little bit of time to think. Why is Yom Kippur a happy day?
So you see, all the pleasures of the world, every human beings are motivated for pleasure. If we offer a pleasure, we can't help ourselves. That's the drive. The difference between a human being and an animal is equally motivated for pain and pleasure. A horse will run if you whip it or you give it carrots. But a human being is motivated for pleasure far more than the art to avoid pain. Like Michelle's a great example of this. We're willing to risk everything for the possibility of pleasure. Now, all pleasures fall into two categories. Every pleasure you can experience. One is the avoidance of the release of pain. And we see that all the time. Comfy shoes, a couch, a bath, all these things are a relief of pain, and that's for a different time. But the most meaningful and the most enjoyable experience you can possibly have is connection. That's what it's all about. That is the greatest joy we can always have. The greatest connection you can have in this world is with a spouse. The greatest connection you can have in general, beyond that, is with God. The more meaningful the thing you're connecting with, the more the pleasure. So people connect to pet rocks. Why do they have a pet rock? Because it's a connection. You're going to have the higher the thing you're connecting to. That's why dogs generally speaking, enjoy human beings' company more than they do other dogs. Because it's a higher being they're connecting to.
So we're connecting with God even if it's around the most difficult stuff.
We're connecting with God. What stops us connecting with God? We don't think we're worthy. We think we should get it right. This is the mistake human beings make. We think we should know how to do this. Michelle's a classic example, but I do it worse than she does. We don't have enough time. We all mess up. That's what human beings do. Only in movies do people not mess up. That's one of the tragedies of Hollywood, is they make you think you can get it right.
You gave me a great segue, Rabbi, to tie in the psychology of behavioral change, which I find fascinating. I was most fascinated by the fact it doesn't seem to be inconsistent with Jewish theology. You just talked about kind of the pleasure-seeking aspect of being human, and kind of I would even relate that to kind of the animal soul and kind of being able to rise above that. Well, Leah, I understand, and I'm going to be a pretend psychologist for a moment, that's kind of at the essence of breaking bad behavior, because we have habits that are pleasure-based. They give us like a release of dopamine in the brain, and that comes often from pleasure that comes from sometimes bad behavior. So we get kind of wired that way.
Yes.
And the question is, how do we unwire that?
There's several ways, therapy being one of them, to kind of unwire yourself. But I think the most important news that I want to share with our listeners is that becoming aware of your patterns is a way to break them. Understanding that, if you're a smoker and you need that other cigarette, understanding that other cigarette will give you pleasure might make you aware that you want to seek pleasure elsewhere. Like you want to just have a healthier habit form, and understanding that you need pleasure in this specific moment, and have a new way to look for it.
We certainly do that in Yom Kippur.
Yeah.
A lot of awareness of how of our wiring. I'm wondering, specifically, if you could give some concrete advice, Leah and Rabbi Bars. You can use Michelle and I as guinea pigs as you want. On the things that we can do practically to change bad habits. The awareness is one, but what can we do, not just so we don't have the same, narrative on repeat at Yom Kippur next year?
I think discipline is a really understated thing in our society nowadays. It's like flexing a muscle, you really have to have discipline in order to not continue the pattern and the bad habit. So a practical advice for everyone is try for once to choose something else and stick to it and be disciplined. And, it's another habit that's going to form. Instead of a negative thing, you can choose something positive and keep sticking to it. And even though it hurts, even though you want rewards, even though you want, a quick fix, just stick with something that will make you healthier in the long term.
Yeah, one of the researchers on this topic, is a psychologist at Florida State University, Dr. Roy Baumeister, talks about, is a big advocate of and an expert on the concept of self-control, and uses similar language, that it's like a muscle. And if you exercise self-control a little bit, it becomes easier the next time, and then a little bit more the next time, et cetera. Does that resonate for you, what Leah just said? And then we hear from Rabbi Bars and the spiritual guidance?
It does. It does. It makes sense to me. I was thinking also that part of some bad behavior, we justify it. And I think maybe also when we think about removing the justification of it, then it makes us more accountable for our bad behaviors.
Yeah, we rationalize.
Yeah.
It's harder to do that on Yom Kippur because our sacred texts have so many listings of the bad things that it's like harder to hide. Even like Rabbi Bar said, asking for forgiveness for sins of another lifetime. Rabbi Bars, what's a practical piece of advice that a rabbi, that a spiritual guide would give on changing a bad habit?
I don't know. When I meet a spiritual guy, I'll ask him. You just got me for the moment, so I'm on the hook. And no, Leah's right. You've got to change the way you think. I have a saying: if your life is hard, you're doing it right. How hard was it for you or anyone here to not snort cocaine this morning? So if you're a cocaine addict, it will be very difficult. But for us, it's not difficult, I hope, because we think about cocaine in ways to make it easy. It's not difficult if you think about it the right way. The same with alcohol. And there are things that other people do you wish you could do. We just don't think about it the right way. And the idea is that we don't succeed because we are motivated. We are motivated because we know we will succeed. I'll give you a very simple parable to understand this. If I gave you next week's winning lottery number, and you had to get to the 7-Eleven, a specific 7-Eleven by next Tuesday morning, 6:30 in the morning, 2,000 miles away, and the only way you could get there was on roller skates, and the winnings are $1.3 billion, you're going to be there. We're not motivated and we succeed. We succeed because we are motivated. We are motivated because we know we're going to succeed. When we know that the winnings are $1.3 billion, we don't have a problem.
I hear you both. You're talking in a certain sense about a risk-reward dynamic, and it's interesting that the psychological and the spiritual advice would have that kind of like a compensating for good behavior as a counterweight to behaving badly. For me, it's a lot about personal accountability. I want to get to that in a minute, but let's take a caller. By the way, we had a couple callers on, and I know it was a long wait, so you may have dropped off. Feel free to call back in, but now we're going to take, I guess, a caller on line 5.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
Yeah, it's Rivki.
Hi, Rivki.
Hi. I see that you have made a conscientious effort to have your show on a higher plateau. I see that you have these rabbis on, and I tend to listen when you have something like this that's, shall we say, kosher. Is this a new change? Is this something new?
Well, Rivki,
are we going to, after the holidays, are we going back to the subjects that we don't really enjoy?
What subject don't you enjoy?
Oh, I don't know. If you had a whole bunch of shows that were like, I don't know, they're not geared to your listenership.
You know, we may have a
You
slightly
have
different
to
view.
realize who's listening. And listen, put it this way: the more modern Jewish people are not listening to the radio. They couldn't care less about the radio. They're busy on different things. They might be on TV. They might be doing all kinds of watching online things, or what do they call that? I don't even know.
Social media?
Social media, where they subscribe to movies. What's that called? And they watch
Netflix.
Netflix, right? Netflix. They're not interested in radio. I know some of these modern people. I sometimes call them. There's a great program on Zev Brenner's program. No, that's not my speed. So you have to realize who your listenership is. Mainly Orthodox people. I'm not saying Hasidish or Litvish, but Orthodox people who like sometimes to hear what's going on the radio.
Maybe sometimes in the Orthodox community, we sometimes like to hear what we want to hear too. And I think part of what we try to do in the program is talk about stuff that's hard to talk about. And sometimes that stuff people have worked through and they feel comfortable hearing in their kitchen.
I know.
And sometimes it's stuff that's hard to hear because someone's suffering. And
No,
I think
But you're
here,
thinking about it on your perspective, and it doesn't jive with us. It's a different perspective. Yes, it's true. Some people go through these hard things, but it's on your perspective. You have to understand. You have to realize the mindset of your listenership.
well, let me ask you as a listener, Rivki, what do you, as you approach Yom Kippur, is there something that you feel like you've been through before? Do you feel like as you're standing in front of Hashem on Yom Kippur, do you feel sometimes like, oh, I still haven't figured this out? I'm still doing this wrong thing? Do you have any insight here for Michelle or to Leah or Rabbi Barz or myself on how to break that pattern, or is that not something you experience?
No, I could say I would have those problems. I've always had a problem with time. I have more things to do than I have the time to do. And I could shoot myself. Why didn't I stop what I'm doing and go to this other thing I had to do? And, time was always a problem. But that's for me to deal with. But I'll tell you why I'm calling, because
Rivki, what's your practical advice for us?
Okay, let's see. What do you advise for that?
Yeah.
What's your advice for someone that can't manage time? It's just part of I can't help it. Like my husband is very much a on-time person, like a Yekka person. And I guess that's why we're married, so he can push me along,
Well, it sounds like you're taking the first step of accountability.
Right.
And
no, I know this is my problem. It's been my problem. Even in school, I'm just the type of person that if there's something that has to be done, and even though there's something else that should have been done, I would rather stop. Or like this phone call, I'm supposed to be somewhere now, but
well, let's help you with that. We appreciate the call, Rivki, and
I decided I had to call you up.
I appreciate it.
But this is what I'm calling you about. It seems like you're changing the tone of your show a little bit.
Ah, well, that's the essence. Sorry for the interruption. That's the essence. And Rivki, I thank you for your call. I wish you an easy fast.
Easy fast.
Yes,
I just wanted to say.
I wanted to tell you that your listenership would greatly appreciate if you could change the music to maybe some kind of a dinner music that's more relaxing than that lady singing Keep It Up and that other thing that you played. I have to tell you that I listen to other programs, secular programs, and once they start that music, I just turn it down. And sometimes I forget to turn them up again.
Yeah.
And I say, I didn't miss anything.
Well,
Forget
I appreciate that feedback,
but if
and thank you.
change the music, you would.
Well, let's talk about. Let's go back to. Thank you, Rifki. I appreciate it. I hope you have an easy fast and a dear beloved and happy New Year. So I wanted to just to extract out of that the change, because that's the theme for tonight's program, is how do we actually change? And I want to do a little poll amongst the four of us. Michelle, do you think people fundamentally change?
Fundamentally?
Yeah. Do you think people can really change?
Do I think people can change? Yes.
Do you think they do?
A little.
Rabbi Bars, just to kind of a yes or no, do you think people can and do fundamentally change?
I think there's a core group of people that do change, and there's a lot of people that don't.
Leah, what do you think?
This is always tricky for me. I'll try to be quick. I think people can change. I think they don't change. I think they need to be put under extreme circumstances in order to change.
So I figured I might be the outlier here. I think people do change, and I think we mix up the recidivism, so going back to bad behavior, as evidence that people don't change. And sometimes it's incremental, but significant. So like with David, his partner has broken your heart twice.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like there was any change? I do understand, I hope I'm not giving anything. I understand he was an alcoholic, or he is an alcoholic, but he's sober now.
Yeah.
So he seems to have changed in that regard.
Yeah.
Was the behavior this second time around, Michelle, in this relationship different, better than the last time?
It was better.
So he's changed.
He has changed. Yeah.
Rabbi Bars, you tell an allegory, which I love, about how you can have water dripping on a rock. And it could be dripping for millions of years.
Yeah, this question of change is one that the Talmud discussed over 2,000 years ago. And the great paradigm of change is Rabbi Akiva, because Rabbi Akiva was 40 years old and illiterate, and he started learning. And, anybody at that age, 40 is not over the hill, thank God, but nevertheless, if you're still 40 and you're still illiterate, you've got some big obstacles. And he became the great Rabbi Akiva. At one point, he had 24,000 students, like mind-boggling. So the Talmud wants to know how he did it. And he got despondent. He was learning, wasn't going in, he didn't feel any growth. So he went to the well, and he saw water dripping on a rock. And he said to himself, if water can make an impression on a rock, then I can change too. And my teacher, Rav Noach Hitzel, he explained, what did he see? You see, when water drops on a rock, you can't see any change. To the human eye, it looks like nothing happened. How do we know it changed? By the end. And to go back to flog a dead horse, the same thing was with the bicycle. If the kid stops in the middle before they learn to ride a bicycle and they've fallen 3 times, they go, this is never going to work.
Right.
They can't see the change. When they finally do learn how to ride, they think they went from non-riding to riding, but that's not true. Each fall was another micro change that made the difference. The problem is giving up.
Yeah.
That's the mistake.
What really sunk in for me at the water dripping on the rock example is that even over thousands of years or hundreds of thousands of years, you may not see the change, but eventually there's a crevice, right? And eventually there's a hole in the rock, and it's incremental change. And I think one of the Rifki referred to it in a certain sense of like, with all the inputs that we have, we expect everything to be immediate and right in front of us. And see, Rifki, we're making incremental change on the program. Maybe next year we'll even change some of the music. I want to talk before we're going to skip our last ad break. We're near the end of the program, and it'll be a last program of the year, of the Jewish year. I want to talk about accountability. And it's a layman's view of Yom Kippur is it's a lot about accountability. And as we were doing some of the research before the show, one thing struck me, Leah, from a psychology perspective. And is the idea of accountability, taking accountability being so close to the line of not taking accountability. So I'm going to read a sentence. Here's what I mean. So you're late to work and you say, sorry, I'm late. My alarm didn't go off. I've taken accountability, kind of. I said, I'm sorry. But then you try to emphasize without the second part of the sentence. Sorry, I'm late. And the idea, according to this psychologist, that's the difference between truly in taking accountability is rooting out the excuse. Or you turn in something again at work and you get some negative feedback because there were typos. So you can say, yes, there are typos, but I only had 3 hours to write up my sales report. Or, yes, there are typos. And I think, I wonder if this resonates with all of you, that going into Yom Kippur, for me, a big step in changing the bad behavior is taking away the excuse, which is the part that's most ingrained. I'm sorry I did that to you, but I have this issue from my childhood. I'm sorry I did that to you, but this was my inner reasoning for it. Or even if I don't even say that out loud to the person I've transgressed upon. I say, sorry I did it, but inside, as Michelle said, I'm rationalizing. But it happened because of this. I had this bad pattern. That's what my therapist told me. Mm-hmm. Instead of just, I'm sorry I did that to you. Rabbi, what do you think?
Yeah, that's accountability is phenomenal if you can get yourself into that mindset. But I'd like to ask Michelle a question if you don't mind. Is that okay?
Yes, of course.
It'll be the last of we're just in the last couple of minutes. So Michelle, you get to finish yourself.
Okay.
Okay. If you had a choice between the two, who would you rather be right now, Michelle or David?
Myself.
So you see that he's suffering worse than you are. Mm. That's where you want to get to. When you can realize that he's suffering worse than you. This is years ago. We had a survivor from the Holocaust, and he was shouting at us, "Where was your God in the Holocaust?" So my friend, Rabbi Tom Meyer, he asked him this question: who would you rather be, an inmate or a guard? And the man said, I know what Auschwitz was, and I'd go back right this minute rather than be a guard.
Wow.
Do you want to be the victim or the villain?
Well, I don't think we... I would posit that we don't want to be either.
Yeah, that's true, but sometimes we don't have a choice. Do you know who Bernie Madoff's biggest victim was?
Tell us.
Himself. Mm. You'd rather be a victim of Bernie Madoff than to know what you did. And you did those things.
I hear that. What a powerful message to end us on. Michelle, thank you for coming back.
Thank you. I enjoyed this.
We hope you've now somehow broken through here in the future about the changed behavior.
This has helped a lot. I appreciate it.
Rabbi Bars, thank you as always for joining. And Leah, thanks for coming into the studio.
Thank you, everyone.
Very meaningful. Very meaningful. Thank you. Thank you, Dov, and thank you, Leah. And thank you, Michelle, for sharing.
Thank you.
A blessed new year to all.
Thanks.